In my 17th year, on the cusp of adulthood, I am facing an important event. Very soon, when I turn 18, I will receive a significant amount of money. These funds are the legacy of my mom, whom we lost when I was only 7 years old. Ever since I was born, my mom, along with my maternal grandparents, began to form this fund. The amount in question ranges between $500,000 and $1 million. It was earned through a successful business that my grandparents ran for many years. In the end, when they decided to sell it 18 months ago, they dedicated the proceeds specifically to my future, leaving nothing for themselves. This decision was part of my mother's plan, who, anticipating various circumstances, including the possibility of my father remarrying and having other children, wanted to secure my future. She entrusted the management of the funds to her parents. My father, although aware of the fund's existence, never learned its exact size. My grandparents continued to replenish it, keeping everything under control. I became aware of this inheritance over a year ago. My grandparents wished for me to be aware of my options and prepare for the decisions ahead. They emphasized that the money could not replace my mom, but could make the transition to independent living much easier. Meanwhile, my father has started a new family. He has a teenage stepdaughter and a young son with his current wife. The family is not characterized by great wealth. My father's wife is raising her children to be hardworking, preparing them for scholarships and financial aid for college, especially the oldest daughter, who dreams of becoming a lawyer. Since I learned about the money, my father has had numerous serious conversations with me. He has endeavored to find out our future plans. At the end of one such conversation, I assured him that I had no concerns about finances and shared information about the inheritance. His reaction was full of surprise. After he discussed it with his wife, they suggested that I distribute the funds among our family to help my stepdaughter and son with their education. I expressed my position. I do not wish to share these funds as they were generated by my family and not my father's wife's family. She considers my decision to be overly selfish, given that these funds could have significantly helped my stepbrother and sister. My father also opined that even a partial division of the money could have significantly supported the family. I defended my view that I had no plans to divide the inheritance. Their displeasure with me grew. They argued that selfishness was not a good character trait. My father was particularly upset because he continued to invest resources in me, expecting a more equal distribution of benefits in the future. This situation led to me being labeled selfish and an idiot for my decisions and views. Your unique situation does not mean that you are being reckless with your resources. There seems to be an assumption that resources not devoted to supporting your half-sister and brother will be spent inappropriately. This notion originated quite some time ago when your parents once again emphasized their position, reflecting exactly the reason your mother took certain steps. She had a deep understanding of your father's character and realized that without her intervention, the funds would not have been distributed equitably and would have gone to the needs of the children, to whom she was not directly involved. Only your mother knew that your father planned to use her financial contribution to support the other children, but your grandparents were also certain of this. They foresaw that if your father found out about the money, he would use it as an excuse to avoid his obligation to support you. It is interesting to note that your father expresses his displeasure that the funds continue to be accumulated just for you, assuming they are distributed equally among the 3 children, despite the fact that you will have access to these resources in the coming months. The question arises as to whether your father plans to request a return of the invested funds or if he already considers them forfeited in favor of your half-siblings. You express gratitude to your father for unwittingly confirming your mother's point. When you leave home and reduce contact with them, you leave the initiative to them in the matter of establishing contact and categorically refuse to provide financial support. I express my disagreement. In my view, it would be unfair to suggest that the reallocation of funds accumulated by the father for important personal needs is unreasonable. After all, this money was earned by him personally, and he is well within his rights to decide how it should be distributed. All his life, he has provided for and supported his family, as is expected of a responsible parent, thus making a meaningful contribution to his children's future. If I had been lucky enough to win the lottery to the tune of $750,000 after taxes as a teenager, I would have been shocked to think that my parents would have wanted to use that money to pay for my education. After all, it is considered that their savings should provide for my siblings' needs, especially if they have about $88,000 in their account. My experience during high school shows that equality does not always equate to fairness. Next story. I turned 44 years old. I am a woman. My daughter, who is now 25, is set to marry her chosen one, who is 27 years old, later this year. Since long ago, I have cherished the dream of accompanying her down the aisle, thereby replicating the moment my husband went through. As a child, my daughter often imagined herself as a bride, having conversations about her future wedding. She loved to play wedding games, picking out flowers, identifying colors, and choosing locations. She loved rewatching the video of my wedding, watching her father and I take our vows to each other. Those moments were meaningful to our bond. When she turned 13, I promised her my wedding dress. Over time, however, it became apparent that her clothing preferences leaned toward a more masculine style. In her teenage years, she refused to wear dresses or skirts. She persisted in asking permission at school to wear pants, which was a kind of challenge to the traditional dress code. Persuading her to wear a dress to attend formal events was difficult. She had a variety of desires, including a desire for a short haircut, to identify herself as a boy, and to have tattoos that expressed her uniqueness. I always supported her in these aspirations. This support continued even when she began dating and proposed to her girlfriend, affirming her willingness to accept her choices and preferences. I always tried to inspire her and support her decisions. By the time of the wedding, I had made significant contributions. Recently, I called her to clarify when I should bring my wedding dress, assuming it might need some alterations. However, her response, expressing her desire to wear a suit and adapt my wedding dress so that only the bodice remained of the skirt to be worn with pants, came as a surprise to me. At first I agreed to her proposal, but as time went on, I began to doubt the correctness of my decision. After a while, I changed my mind, realizing the importance of the dress to me personally, and expressed my reluctance to see it altered. I explained that I had offered the dress with the idea that she would wear it in its original form. The suggestion that her girlfriend wear it was also unsatisfactory, as it would require significant alterations due to the size difference, and my daughter feared that it would alter it beyond recognition. She has since stopped responding to my messages, explaining that the dress symbolizes a connection to her father and that she is upset about his absence. I suggested that she go shopping together in search of a new dress, hoping to find a suitable alternative. However, it has come to my attention that some family members see my actions as an obstacle to her desire to wear the dress originally suggested. They are convinced that my objections are based on a rejection of her desire for a more masculine image. My saying that she can both wear the dress and refuse to wear it seems unreasonable to them. Perhaps I am indeed acting unreasonably, remembering the promise I made to her as a child, before I realized her desire to change her style. You are not acting unreasonably by expressing concern about your wedding dress. You offered it in good faith, not suggesting that it could be altered beyond recognition. Your dress holds living memories that are priceless. If the dress cannot be returned in its original form, your concerns are justified. Alterations of this nature require deliberation, perhaps with a professional couturier, to see what is really possible to do. You probably have other items related to her father that could help create that connection at the wedding, such as incorporating them into the ceremony or creating something inspired by your wedding day. This can be an alternative way for your daughter to feel this important connection. It's also worth recognizing that while the memories associated with a dress are incredibly important, the reality is that things that aren't used may be perceived as unnecessary. Nevertheless, understanding and respecting the sentimental value of the item is important for both parties. Explaining your feelings to your daughter can help her understand your position. You're right to point out the difference between an item promised as a child and its current significance. Your dress is not just a piece of fabric, but a symbol of an important day in your life, not material to create something new. Maybe you do have a father's suit that could be a symbolic element in your daughter's wedding, combining a desire to preserve the memory of the past and respect for her individual style. It could be the perfect solution, connecting her to the memory of her father while also reflecting her personal preferences. Now I want to tell a different story. At my 25th birthday, and already almost 2 years into a relationship, my 23-year-old friend and I have had some unique moments together. From the beginning of our acquaintance, she has captivated. In one of our first dialogues, where we exchanged thoughts about likes and dislikes, I opened up to her. I was not attracted to body hair on women, especially under the arms and on the legs. Everything else didn't matter to me. She took my opinion without objection, sharing that she herself did not like the feeling of hair on her body. Recently, however, there has been a change. She started growing hair under her arms and on her legs, motivating her choice by the body-positive trends she saw on TikTok. This, she said, made her more confident. I tried to accept her decision, but admitted to myself that I didn't like it. When I expressed my opinion, it was met with resentment. She was upset by my reaction, fearing that I would become one of those who leave a partner over such issues. In turn, she stated that I would never find a woman willing to adjust to such demands on a daily basis and called me an idiot for my attempts to discuss the subject. I never threatened to break up. They were just attempts to express my feelings and preferences. I was facing limitations due to my condition and reached out to my partner to ask for help. Explained that due to my physical limitations, I was unable to shave my legs on my own. Suggested that if it was really important to him, it might be worth considering giving me this assistance. This suggestion raises the issue of willingness to put time and effort into a task that seems meaningful. Noted that if such issues seem insignificant or a waste of time for someone, there is always the opportunity to reprioritize and relook at relationships. The world of relationships is rich and varied, and each of us has different preferences and expectations. The importance of external attributes such as body hair and how such preferences can affect relationships has come up. It needs to be recognized that accepting a person for who they are is key in any relationship, and that mutual understanding and willingness to make concessions play a significant role. I emphasize that appearance preferences are everyone's personal choice, but they should not become a stumbling block in a relationship. If a relationship cannot stand the test of small imperfections or differences, then there is a question of its sustainability in more difficult situations. Gave an example of support and love in difficult times, emphasizing that real feelings and support are much more important than external trappings. The final part touches on the theme of acceptance and support in relationships, emphasizing that it is not external attributes that matter, but mutual understanding, respect, and willingness to support each other in all circumstances. As I studied the comments, I realized my mistakes. I ultimately made the decision to end the relationship, but she did not meet this decision lightly. In response to my decision, she warned me about the possibility of damaging my belongings before she went to live with her mom. At the time, I didn't realize the full seriousness of the situation. There was a point where I was ready to give her an ultimatum on the matter, realizing now that I deserve to be criticized for my actions. I am grateful for all the opinions expressed and am willing to reconsider my views on situations like this. Although it seemed like the best solution for both of us was to break up, I now see the situation from a different angle. My next story. Yesterday after school, my son approached me. He expressed his desire not to go to class the next morning. When I asked him about the reasons for this decision, he replied that he did not want to go and that he was tired from getting up early. I explained that these arguments were not sufficient for absenteeism and suggested a solution in the form of an earlier bedtime. This suggestion caused him frustration. He argued the need for rest to maintain mental health and warned that forcing school attendance would make the situation worse. I was concerned about this. I asked if his reluctance was due to bullying or problems with teachers. He denied this, citing only irritation at dealing with them as the reason. I tried to show understanding by comparing it to my own experiences with coworkers who can also be annoying. I pointed out that this was not a reason for absence from work. At the mention of possible mental health damage from the school environment, I suggested seeing a therapist. This suggestion only increased his irritation. He insisted on the need for time away from the school environment, claiming that I was underestimating the stress of school. I expressed understanding and offered therapeutic help to combat the stress, which sparked an argument. We never came to an agreement, which left me at a loss. I reminded my son of his scheduled doctor's appointment on Wednesday, emphasizing that missing school on Tuesday and Wednesday was not necessary. I expressed my desire to avoid his absence from school unless absolutely necessary. He took my words as an underestimation of the importance of his mental health and accused me of not loving him if I made him go to class. He further warned of the consequences if I insisted on seeing a therapist, but refused to elaborate, urging me not to worry and to leave him alone. In the morning, he was hostile and ignored my attempts to start a conversation. When I drove him to school, he expressed surprise at my attitude toward him and slipped out of the car without giving me a chance to respond. After school, I tried to discuss what had happened, but he continued to ignore me and still does not speak to me. I recognize the importance of teaching kids to take care of themselves and empowering them to have mental health days during their teenage years. I allow my son to do this knowing that he is not abusing this opportunity. Schools today emphasize mental health while adults are taught to strive for success, often forgetting self-care. This leads to adults working themselves to exhaustion, not knowing how to take care of themselves. It is important to teach children to look after their mental well-being, even if problems are not visible at first glance, and to trust them to do so. I partly share, partly don't, the view on mental health days. Such days are undoubtedly important and should be part of our daily lives. However, one gets the feeling that in this case, the child is seeking to misuse this opportunity, wanting to avoid school duties. His manipulative behavior, rudeness, and lack of readiness for dialogue give the impression that his interest in the mental health day is not so much due to a concern for his own well-being, but rather a desire for an extra day off. Perhaps behind this is a desire to avoid a particular school activity or assignment. The story seems to be an example of dramatization on the part of the child, but the parent is taking their words with understanding and seriousness, which is certainly the right approach. Adolescence is often accompanied by emotional instability and a tendency to dramatize, but this passes over time. It is important to emphasize the readiness to help the child, provided he or she is open and willing to discuss the nature of the problem. This approach will allow a common solution to be found. Simply saying, "I don't want to go to school," cannot be considered a valid reason for missing a school day without further explanation. A story that really surprised me. My girlfriend and I have been dating for almost 3 years now. Recently, we decided to spend an evening together, starting with dinner at one of our favorite restaurants and then moving on to visit a few cocktail bars. The evening promised to be exceptional. After a nice dinner, we found ourselves at the first of the planned bars. Suddenly, a group of my girlfriend's friends walked in. They were already tipsy and invited us to join their fun. My girlfriend looked at me for agreement, but I politely declined, to which they persistently offered us at least one drink each. I repeated my refusal, reminding them that we planned to spend the evening together. Despite this, my girlfriend felt that one drink would not ruin our plan. I tried to explain that my friends probably wouldn't want to leave after one glass, and that it was important to keep our idea of an evening just for the two of us. After offering to end the current visit and move on to the next bar, I was confronted with my girlfriend's desire to just go home. Upon leaving the bar together, she expressed her displeasure to me, believing that I had ruined our evening. In response, I tried to clarify that the whole point of the evening was our socializing and the absence of strangers. However, my girlfriend insisted on her point of view, criticizing my unwillingness to join in the fun. In the end, I defended my position on the importance of spending time together, despite apt remarks about my refusal to allow my friends to join us. If you approach the situation in terms of adequate terminology, you could say that you were faced with a no-win choice. By turning down the offer to have a drink with your girlfriend's friends, you are facing her resentment over your refusal. Otherwise, by accepting the offer, you risk spending the entire evening in their company, which contradicts the idea of a romantic date just for the two of you. Such a prospect is a far cry from the idea of an evening dedicated only to each other. Your girlfriend, who thinks it's acceptable for her friends to be present on your date, may not fully realize the point of such moments, although that's just my opinion. The seemingly simple compromise of having a drink with your friends and going to another bar afterward has led to a misunderstanding between the two of you. You feel misunderstood by declining your girlfriend's offer to spend time with her friends, which you think may have led to confusion. Thinking about the situation from a different perspective, imagine if you had agreed to one drink and then offered to continue the evening elsewhere. This might seem like controlling behavior, but considering that your girlfriend may have informed her friends of her whereabouts in advance, their sudden uninvited appearance seems inappropriate and demonstrates a lack of understanding of etiquette. In this context, your girlfriend may not fully understand the point of having a date that involves time devoted solely to each other. After all, if I met a friend at a restaurant or bar and found out they were on a date, I would not insist on spending time together, respecting their privacy. Such behavior would be extremely impolite.